In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, December 20th, here on the peninsula. Top diplomats of the Group of Seven denounced North Korea's latest launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile, pointing out that it follows 4 previous ICBM testings this year, as well as other launches using ballistic missile technology. Meanwhile, Israel opens up prospects for another ceasefire in war-torn Gaza in return for hostages held by the Palestinian militant group Hamas as international condemnation of civilian casualties mounts. And Russia's Vladimir Putin pledges to push ahead with his military offensive against Ukraine, claiming that Russia will, quote, not give up what belongs to it, as Ukraine has yet to secure a tangible guarantee of more US aid from its Congress. In a statement shared on Tuesday, foreign ministers representing the Group of Seven condemned North Korea's, quote, repeated reckless actions and called for a prompt and powerful global response led by the UN Security Council. But despite these calls, the Council's latest meeting came to a close with no consensus. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
The UN Security Council meeting was held in New York on Tuesday to address North Korea's evolving military threats, but ended without a concrete outcome. The meeting was convened following Pyongyang's test firing of its most advanced ICBM missile on Monday, which has the potential to reach the U.S. During the meeting, a senior UN official for political affairs, Khaled Kiari, strongly criticized Pyongyang's continuing provocations.
Any launch by the DPRK using ballistic missile technology is a violation of relevant Security Council resolution.
North Korea, however, dismissed the criticism, saying it is exercising its sovereign right as recognized by international law. Tuesday's UNSC meeting ended without any tangible results, but South Korea, the U.S., and 8 other countries released a joint statement before the meeting, which called on the North to abandon its unlawful missile programs. G7 ministers also issued a joint statement on Tuesday, condemning Pyongyang's latest launch of ICBM in, quote, the strongest terms. It also urged the international community to take firm and unified action against North Korea's, quote, reckless nuclear and missile threats. The statement also criticized Pyongyang for arms transfers to Moscow and urged for a halt to such activities and for North Korea to abide by relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Meanwhile, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller on Tuesday spoke of a shift in the country's North Korean policy while reaffirming full commitment to its 2 Asian allies.
We have tried to make it a policy of never not reacting to every provocative statement that he makes. And our commitments to the defense of the Republic of Korea and Japan remain ironclad.
Miller, however, said the U.S. has no hostile intent towards the North and called on the regime to engage in dialogue. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
On the local political front, Seoul's spy agency and its foreign ministry are looking at new heads of operations in the latest reshuffle of the Yoon administration's cabinet amid preparations for next April's parliamentary election. Our Peunji has their names and more.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has named current National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yul as the head of the country's intel agency. He will be filling the vacancy created after the National Intelligence Service Director Kim Kyu-hyun resigned last month. Cho, a veteran diplomat, joined the foreign ministry in 1980, and his career has mainly been focused on U.S. affairs and North Korean issues. Prior to becoming the National Security Advisor, he was the country's ambassador to the U.S. and served as the first deputy chief of the Presidential National Security Office during the Park Geun-hye administration. Cho said he is aware that the intel agency's role is to present accurate information at the right time to help the country make the right decisions.
I'll make utmost efforts to make the National Intelligence Service becomes one of the best intel agencies in the world.
And the former ambassador to the United Nations, Cho Tae-yul, was nominated as the country's new foreign minister. Also a veteran diplomat, the presidential office explained that he has expertise in bilateral and multilateral diplomacy, especially in the field of economy and trade. After starting his career as a diplomat in 1979, he served as the ambassador to Spain and the chairman of the World Trade Organization dispute panel. Cho said he feels a heavy weight on his shoulders at a time of major geopolitical shifts, noting the intense competition between the U.S. and China and the Ukraine war.
I will do my best to strengthen the foundation for national security and prosperity by expanding the nation's diplomatic position and our strategic space.
The National Assembly will be holding confirmation hearings, but the president can effectively make the appointments since parliamentary approval for ministerial positions is not mandatory. Tuesday's nominations come amid escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula and a cabinet reshuffle in recent weeks, with incumbent ministers and top secretaries leaving their posts to run for parliament next April. As for the new National Security Advisor, a senior presidential official said the nominee will be announced after further reviews. Amid global supply chain risks, the official also said the presidential office will create a new position of a third deputy national security advisor to handle economic security issues. Currently, the first deputy advisor handles foreign policy issues, while the second deputy is in charge of national defense. 배은지, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Foreign Minister nominee Cho Tae-yul has highlighted the importance of Seoul's ties with both Beijing and Washington. In the case of the former, that is Beijing, Cho shared his commitment to seeking ways to promote a peaceful and productive partnership. He further pledged to pursue appropriate diplomatic policies, keeping in mind the current geopolitical standoff between Seoul, Tokyo and Washington on one side, and Beijing, Pyongyang and Russia on the other. In a shift from its earlier stance, Israel has touched upon the possibility of another ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Our Isingje covers these prospects.
The Israeli military's continuing airstrikes and ground offensives in Gaza has resulted in thousands of civilian deaths. And that has led to growing international condemnation, including from traditional allies. The United States has also called on Israel to scale back its attacks to target only Hamas. Amid growing criticism, Israeli President Isaac Herzog has said his country is willing to agree a new temporary truce with Hamas in Gaza in exchange for more hostages. Speaking to a gathering of ambassadors on Tuesday, Herzog said Israel is ready for another humanitarian pause and additional humanitarian aid in order to enable the release of hostages. The previous 7-day temporary ceasefire last month led to the release of 86 women and children held by Hamas in exchange for 240 Palestinian women and teenagers held in Israeli jails. The militant group also released 24 foreign nationals during that period. Meanwhile, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh is expected to visit Egypt on Wednesday to hold ceasefire talks, raising hopes for another temporary pause in Gaza. However, Israeli Defense Chief Yoav Gallant says its military plans to expand its ground offensives in the Gaza Strip to other areas. He added that through the expansion of the ground offensives, Israel will bring high-ranking Hamas officials to the graveyard or prison. He also said that Khan Yunis, where many refugees from the north of Gaza fled, has become the center of terrorism, adding the military will continue its operations in the region. Meanwhile, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in Gaza admitted that Hamas has turned hospitals into military facilities under its control. The comments came during an interrogation by the Israel Security Agency, where the director revealed how the militant group uses hospitals for military purposes, including hiding its operatives, conducting military activities, and moving its members. Isingje, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, Russia's Vladimir Putin has pledged to maintain his military offensive against Ukraine in the new year. Our Yoon covers his comments.
Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke at a defense leadership meeting in Moscow on Tuesday, during which he stressed that Russia will not give up what he called its territory, adding that Moscow will not abandon the goals of its special military operation.
The West is not abandoning its strategy of containing Russia and its aggressive goals in Ukraine. Well, we are not going to give up our goals for a special military operation.
He said Russia had taken on 490,000 contract and voluntary soldiers in 2023, adding that next year, Russia will try to boost those forces to 745,000 men. During his meeting with the Defense Ministry, Putin said if Western countries or Ukraine want to hold talks with Russia, he's ready to do so, but it would be on Russia's terms.
History will put everything in its place. We won't interfere, but we won't give up our territory. This is what everyone in Ukraine, Europe and the USA, everyone who is aggressive towards Russia should understand. If they want to negotiate, let them negotiate. We will only do it based on our interests.
Putin also reiterated that Ukraine's accession to NATO, even if it's 10 or 15 years from now, is unacceptable. Meanwhile, at an end-of-year news conference on Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he was confident his country would continue to receive important financial support from the US and the EU.
As for financial assistance, we are working very hard on it. I am sure that the United States of America will not betray us, and that what we have achieved with the United States will be fulfilled.
He added that no one knows when the war in Ukraine will end, but the moment could be brought closer if everything necessary for victory is done. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, and in 2022 claimed the 4 additional regions of Ukraine that its troops partially control are part of Russia. Kiev says it will not rest until every last Russian soldier is ejected from Ukraine. 이은진, Arirang News.
At the National Assembly on this Wednesday, it's a race against time as the Parliament seeks to reach a consensus on next year's budget bill. The floor leaders of the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea are meeting this afternoon for related discussions ahead of a vote at the plenary session scheduled for tomorrow, that is Thursday. Lawmakers across the aisle had earlier failed to narrow their differences over the budget bill by the December 2nd legal deadline. Korea raked in an annual average of $15 billion in weapons exports over the past 2 years. According to Seoul's Defense Ministry on this Wednesday, the country's arms sales this year amount to just below $14 billion, while last year Korea secured a record $17.3 billion. Regardless of the retreat in arms exports this year, Korea saw its export markets expand in 2023 to 12 nations from 4. There's also been more diversity in terms of the types of exports of weapons exported, that is, from 6 in 2022 to 12 this year. Aside from profits, the ministry believes greater weapons exports will bolster the military's logistics capabilities by securing more overseas production bases. Also here in Seoul on this Wednesday, the second Korea-Africa Trade and Industry Cooperation Forum kicked off amid preparations for next year's summit-level meeting. According to the industry ministry, some 100 people, including delegations from 17 African countries, were in attendance. The ministry adds the forum seeks to spur economic initiatives between Korea and Africa. Meanwhile, the Korea-Africa Summit will be held in Seoul next May. As of 2019, Korea has in operation a special team of experts assigned with the task of thwarting technology theft. Our Cho Tae-yul explains.
Advanced semiconductor technology was about to be leaked to China. 3 domestic companies were involved, and even the smallest among them could have suffered losses exceeding 100 billion won, or roughly $75.8 million. Damages could have escalated exponentially if the crime had gone unnoticed, as company employees were involved.
Pictures were taken using a mobile phone, and presentation materials were created and delivered to Chinese companies.
The agency that prevented the theft was the Korean Intellectual Property Office's Technology and Design Police Division. Formed in March 2019, the division is comprised of examiners who worked in patent examination at the KIPO. With diverse experts including doctorates, lawyers, and forensic specialists, and by incorporating police investigative techniques, it can prevent significant crimes.
We accurately determine which technology has been infringed. Then we employ police investigative techniques starting from covert operations, suspect interrogations, informant interviews, on-site inspections.
As the effectiveness of the technology police in detecting theft increases, related support is also expanding. Penalties for technology theft, often considered lenient, are being strengthened. An industrial property dispute resolution support center will be established to mediate disputes between companies and, if necessary, involve the KIPO division. With the establishment of the Joint Response Team for Technology Leakage, there are plans to also actively respond to international disputes.
With global technological competition intensifying, stealing technology is much faster than developing it. That's why international issues of technology theft are widely discussed.
In the past 5 years, 93 cases of industrial technology leakage overseas have caused estimated damage of 25 trillion Korean won, or roughly $18.9 billion US. 정은주, Arirang News.
And in other news, Iceland's ROK-China peninsula exploded in volcanic eruptions Monday night, marking its fourth such explosion in fewer than 3 years. Our An Sung-jin reports.
A volcano in the southwestern part of Iceland erupted on Monday evening. The eruption on the ROK-China Peninsula released bursts of glowing lava onto the landscape and huge plumes of smoke more than 100 meters into the sky. This comes after weeks of seismic activity since the underground magma chamber formed in November.
Did the eruption come as a surprise? Yes and no is the answer. So yes, because we did not expect it will start tonight. Yeah. No, because we have seen precursors since many weeks, actually since October.
This prompted an evacuation order for the nearby town of Grindavik with slightly over 3,000 residents. The Icelandic government has said the eruption does not pose a threat to life, but has warned people to stay out of the area as gas emitted from it can be dangerous. Nearby roads are closed to all traffic except emergency teams. However, international flight corridors remain open, though some flight schedules to and from Iceland were delayed. Though hundreds of cubic meters of lava were being released every second in the first 2 hours of the eruption, the intensity soon diminished by early Tuesday, with lava spreading laterally. An expert provided an insight on how long this eruption would last.
It is impossible right now to establish how long it is going to be the eruption. But comparing with the previous history of Icelandic eruption, realistically it is going to last no more than a few months.
Iceland sits on a tectonic plate boundary which makes it a volcanic hotspot in the North Atlantic. It is home to 32 active volcanoes. The most disruptive in recent times was a 2010 eruption of Eyjafjallajökull volcano, which led to huge ash clouds from glacial ice that led to widespread airspace closures over Europe and the Atlantic. Experts say that this most recent volcanic eruption won't cause the same level of chaos as seen in 2010. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. The death toll from the 6.2 magnitude earthquake that hit China's Gansu province on Monday night has now increased to at least 127 people, making it China's deadliest earthquake since 2014. Local authorities reported that a total of 113 people have been killed in Gansu and 14 in the neighboring Qinghai province, with over 700 injured so far. The earthquake has also damaged over 155,000 properties in Gansu. Emergency services have so far rescued 74 people, while over 4,000 were evacuated. The freezing temperatures of below -10 degrees Celsius are adding to the difficulties. This is China's deadliest earthquake since 2014, when more than 600 people were killed in the country's southwestern Yunnan province. The United States and 9 other nations have launched a multinational force on Tuesday to defend ships passing through the Red Sea. This comes as at least a dozen shipping lines have suspended their routes through the Red Sea due to the attacks by Houthi rebel forces in Yemen. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced Tuesday in Bahrain that the U.S., Bahrain, Canada, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, the Seychelles, Spain, and the UK have formed the patrol force to counter Houthi attacks in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. On Monday, the rebel group announced that it attacked the Norwegian Swan Atlantic and the MSC Clara with naval drones. Meanwhile, the US and UK naval forces reported that they've shot down a total of 15 drones over the weekend in the waterway. In the U.S., the Republican governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, approved a new law on Monday that will make illegal border crossings from Mexico punishable under state law, authorizing state officials to arrest migrants and seek deportation. The new law, named SB 4, would give Texas law enforcement the authority to stop and arrest anyone suspected of illegal border crossing anywhere within the state, except in schools and hospitals. Historically, authority for immigration law falls under the U.S. federal government, so this law will likely face legal challenges. Meanwhile, Mexican President Obrador on Tuesday called the new law inhumane and is also preparing to challenge the bill. Abbott said that the goal of Senate Bill 4 is to stop the tidal wave of illegal entry into Texas. The new bill is set to take effect in March 2024. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Snowy roads and freezing temperatures, some of the worst weather conditions we want to face during the cold month. The west coast of Jeollabuk-do province and the mountainous regions of Jeju Island could see more than 30 centimeters of snowfall, while the rest of Jeollado province could see more than 20 centimeters of snow until tomorrow. Also, a heavy snow advisory was issued in Jeollabuk-do and Chungcheong-namdo province, and the cold advisory remains in place for many of the upper regions, and the dry advisory remains in effect for east coast areas. Making matters worse is colder air. Seoul tops out at just -5 degrees Celsius this afternoon, about 5 degrees lower than yesterday. Daejeon at -3 degrees. Then please brace yourselves for -15 degrees tomorrow. Feels like temperatures will plunge to -21 degrees in the capital, but the cold snap will ease just in time for Christmas. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up next is our panel session with our foreign journalists. Do stay with us.